Going now to Mr. Ginas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to the ministers for being here. I appreciate this opportunity. I want to start by asking a question to Minister Qualtrough. Minister, I met with a mom in my riding on Saturday, a mom of children with autism, and she had a specific concern that I'd like to share with you and maybe get some of your feedback on. She's had some trouble with CRA, recognizing certain purchases that she's made as necessary equipment to help her children operate, especially in the area of modern technology. CRA has a tendency, in her experience, to identify things like maybe an iPad or speech apps that are really important for their participation in society, and to look at those and say, well, those look like toys. And that creates a real problem for her. So I wonder if you could comment on that, and I'd really appreciate if you'd be open to talking to your Cabinet colleagues about this and seeing if there's some way that these concerns can be addressed.
First of all, yes, and I can tell you thank you for the question, because you're certainly not the first one that has brought that to my attention. As I said earlier, one of the things I'm excited about in having our consultation around accessibility legislation is I'm hoping that a lot of these, and this is one of them I would suggest, issues that are within federal jurisdiction that wouldn't fall squarely within the four squares of our legislation can be brought to the surface and can then be addressed. One of the things that I'm hoping to do, and one of the things that we're looking at now, is looking across the government to do a horizontal environmental scan, if you will, of programs and policies, and to see the language that is used, and to see the barriers that exist, whether they're direct or indirect, to participation or to accessing the service. The service you're talking about is ironically the less expensive the technology and the more common, the more difficult it is sometimes to get that technology approved, which seems counterintuitive. And I would suggest that I absolutely would certainly like to hear from you and from all of you as we move forward and develop this language and this greater common access on examples just like that of how the government can improve our accessibility. So thank you.
Minister, I appreciate your understanding, and I hope that's an area we'll be able to all work together on across party lines on, because I think some of those changes definitely need to happen. Minister Duclos, I wanted to ask you about income splitting. I know that perhaps we have a bit of a philosophical difference when it comes to income splitting, but I've never really understood the argument against it, because income splitting, yes, it's a tax cut, but really it's about tax fairness. It's about the idea that if you have two families that are earning the same family income, that they should pay the same amount of tax. If you have one family that's earning $60,000 because one person is making 30 and the other person's making 30, and then you have another family that's making 60,000 because one is making 45,000 and the other's making 15,000. Now, under an income splitting system, both of those families pay the same amount of money in tax. Under a system without income splitting, they don't pay the same amount of tax. So it seems to me just sort of intuitive that if you have two different families with the same family income, they should pay the same rate, the same amount of tax. But your government disagrees. The effect of the change you've made, eliminating income splitting in this budget, means that families who make different kinds of choices that are, in their view, good for their families, will pay more tax, will pay a higher rate of tax. As a father of young children, as someone who represents a riding with many young families, this doesn't make any sense to me. I wouldn't ever judge the childcare choices that any family makes, but I would suggest that families should pay the same rate of tax if they earn the same income. I'd appreciate your comments on that.
About 1 minute, sir.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for the kind questions. Let me open the parenthesis for regarding the earlier answer. I should have known the answer by heart, but it's the child disability benefit remains up to a maximum of $2,730. So that's the precise number, which I didn't remember by heart. So the answer was faster than I thought it would be. Now, regarding the income splitting, well, first, there are three reasons that militate against income splitting measures. The first one is simplicity. Now, we are assisting families with the Canadian Child Benefit in a very simple manner, non-taxable, every month, one transfer, so families, transparency, simplicity is greatly enhanced through this particular measure. The second reason is that as we keep saying, I think we all agree on that, it's those families that need it most. that should receive support from the Kenyan government. Our resources, as I said earlier, are always going to be limited. We need to invest in those families that need our support most, and income splitting doesn't do that. And third, we also, in a modern economy in which often the two spouses work. Now, income splitting is going to impose on the spouse that has a lower income the same marginal tax rate faced by the spouse that has a higher income. And still, nowadays, that spouse that has the lowest income is the woman. So income splitting discourages labor force participation on the part of those lower income spouses. And again, it's the women that typically are lower paid. So because income splitting imposes the same marginal tax rate on the same people in the couple, that's not the way we think the tax system should operate.
Thank you,
Mr. Jennings. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Duclos, I wanted to just respond to your comments about income splitting and then hear your response back to those responses, if that's all right. You raised the issue of simplicity, and I find this a little odd, just because many, if not most, countries in the Western world have some form of income splitting. France, Ireland, Germany, Poland, Luxembourg, Spain, Portugal, the United States, there's other examples. I think if they can figure it out, we can too. And it's pretty simple that families that are making the same family income pay the same rate of taxes. And you said that this doesn't help the worst off. It's a tax fairness measure that was capped, you'll remember, at $2,000 in terms of the benefit it paid out, which ensured that the benefits were proportionately towards those at the middle and low end. And this comment about the higher marginal tax rate discouraging workforce participation, I mean, doesn't this contradict your whole justification for raising taxes on top income earners? Because you're raising taxes on top income earners on the basis, presumably, that it won't have a negative effect on their workforce participation and their productivity. And yet you're arguing in the context of income splitting that having that same marginal tax rate on potential new entrants into the workforce has a negative effect. So you can't have your cake and eat it too on those points, right? You have to choose one or the other. So I'd be curious for your comments on those points.
1 minute, sir.
That was my immediate question: how much time do we have left? Because these are very good questions. Now the answers will have to be limited. Well, let me maybe take one question and leave the other to Ms. Devonian, who will talk about Service Canada. First, the question on seniors. I think the important thing here is to recognize that the welfare of seniors belongs to all kinds of departments. And I happen to be one of those ministers that have a particularly important role for the welfare of seniors. And in a matter of few weeks, just with due respect, in a matter of few weeks, we've done quite a lot for seniors. We've increased the guaranteed income supplement and benefit 900,000 seniors. We have moved the age of eligibility to 65, and therefore saving 100,000 seniors out of poverty per year. We have announced $200 million to construct housing for seniors, which is quite something important. And we've also announced that we're going to index pensions for seniors according to the real costs faced by seniors. So it's quite an important array, just in my department, array of measures important for ministers. So to have a minister of seniors would have perhaps visibility advantages, but what is important is that decisive actions are taken by government on this particular aspect. And I would prefer to have ministers being decisive in their actions than a minister of seniors just being a communicator and perhaps a press person to sell policies decided and made by others in government. I'd say this with all due respect, of course, but I have an impression that seniors want actions and decisions as opposed to just media facilitators. Now, for Service Canada, I would let perhaps Ms. Devonian address that issue.